Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next edition of the webinar series that is organized here at the Center for Professional Selling at Ball State University. I am thrilled to have one of the pioneers in sales enablement platforms, an organization called Showpad, where we've had some of the people from Showpad in the past come and share their experiences on sales enablement. But today, we actually have one of the founders of Showpad who's pretty much saw the light about why we need to be looking at sales enablement much before some of the other people have had a chance to take a look at it. And it's my pleasure to welcome Louis Jonckheere to the program. And again, he is the founder and currently the chief product officer. What it means, we'll talk to Louis in just a minute. But Louis, thank you so much for sharing your time with us.
Thank you for inviting me, Dev. I'm very, very excited to be here.
Indeed. And Louis usually shuttles between Chicago, where they have a very big presence in the United States, but the concept of Showpad as a company began in Belgium in a wonderful city called Ghent. So Louis, one of the things that you're just fresh off, and I see that you actually have uh, a sales enablement conference, which is billed as one of the biggest in Europe and called Transform. And this was something that just concluded yesterday, or day before yesterday, on the 9th of October. So first of all, congratulations on that wonderful event. Huh?
Thank you. It's fun. I think we had, over 500 customers, prospects, and partners visiting us in London. So I think it was a good sign of how fast sales enablement is growing. So that was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. And for me, that's one of the things which is also very interesting is the fact that when you began, it was something that was much smaller in scope than what we have here. So when we take a look at sales enablement, right, so essentially there's still a lot of questions about, hey, is it a function? Is it a department? Or is it marketing? Is it sales? So tell me a little bit more about the evolution of sales enablement as you have seen it.
Yeah. So I think as I've seen it, so obviously as a Showpad started out as a sales enablement solution, but focused on solving the content problem. So we saw was the immense disconnect you had between marketing and sales, where marketing was creating content in isolation without using salespeople to help them, and then just literally throwing it over the wall. The result was that salespeople didn't find the content they needed and then just created stuff on their own. So that was the problem we saw. So we started to approach sales enablement from that perspective, from making sure that salespeople were enabled with the right content. So obviously, like that space has evolved. Although like analysts until a year ago still would talk about sales enablement from a content perspective, that is now changing. So for example, Gartner, Serious Decisions, Forrester, they now all start to talk about sales enablement as a more holistic platform. As a platform that basically needs to enable salespeople to deliver a clear, concise, and compelling message to their customers, articulating unique value. And in order to do that, you need to have much more than just the content. You need to have modern coaching. You need to have modern training and basically be able to completely deliver that solution. So we've seen it evolving from a very narrow content focus to like really a broad technology.
And for me, that's very interesting, right? Because you began by talking about content that you want to do, but when did onboarding come in? Because for me, that is a very, very interesting dynamic. And I completely get into the idea that, yes, your content, but of course the idea is that, but when did it get into onboarding? Because let me come back to you about the ramifications at the backside, but let me begin by asking you, when did onboarding come in?
So onboarding actually was a use case that we discovered customers were doing with Showpad already. I think 2-3 years after we started the company, we had like 70-80 customers. And when we started to survey those customers, speak with those customers, one of the top use cases they had was onboarding and making sure that they could give reps in a very controlled way the content they needed to consume to start selling and to really learn. So there was no certification of courses of e-learning involved, but it was just by like using Showpad as a tool to help onboarding. So I would say like that started off very early on. And then I think the market started to slowly understand that there's a difference between an LMS, learning management system, and what they now call in the industry a sales readiness solution, a sales training and onboarding tool
Oh, okay,
specifically
yeah,
focused on salespeople,
yeah,
because there's a lot of nuance. It's not exactly the same.
yeah. So for me, this is fantastic. So what you're saying is that you saw this happening. So this is more like a serendipitous
Yep.
kind of
Yep.
something that happened out there, right?
Yep.
Because what suddenly happens is, because once you start looking at sales readiness solution, you're now moving away from the focus on marketing and sales. Right now HR getting involved too, because I've seen companies right now that
Yep.
talk about sales enablement not from the viewpoint of pushing content.
Yep.
It's completely moved away to HR taking it over in terms of employee onboarding. Because,
Yep.
and now, to what extent do you think that that is also becoming something very important, saying that it just adds to the difficulty
Yep.
in kind of implementing it?
Yeah, no, it's a very fair question, and it's something we also see in the market as a complexity, right? Because if we're selling Showpad, suddenly we're faced with sales, marketing, IT, and sometimes even HR. And I think to start it, I think companies that have a professionalized sales enablement function, a department with people actively focused on that with a budget, then we see that those departments typically have the freedom to buy a content solution, but also a sales learning solution or a sales coaching solution. So I would say in companies that have maturity in sales enablement, they get it. There's still some touch point with HR, but like they understand that sales coaching and sales training for salespeople is different than what they can achieve with a cornerstone on demand or like a
Yeah,
success factor.
yeah,
Companies that do not have that maturity, I mean, yeah, the moment you bring up to them sales training, they think about HR and they
yeah.
think about their corporate LMS. So there's an evolution we still need to have.
Indeed. No, that's interesting that you talk about, because I got exposed from the viewpoint of not onboarding, from a kind of a, when we were using it in my previous job, we were at Vlerick, which is pretty much where you graduated from, Louis, is that we were using it much more from the viewpoint of pushing content in a training program, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and that actually, it's kind of the precursor to what it is in terms of salesperson onboarding, which of course goes beyond just
Yeah.
learning system, because there's also a coaching part we'll just get to in
Yes.
just a minute. But we were actually beginning to take a look at it as well. So in your opinion, so now if I'm looking at a sales manager who's trying to say, well, you know what, I need to onboard my employees, but we have an existing LMS system that our organization is pushing.
Yeah.
Now, how would they then try to justify a spend on a sales
Yeah.
enablement platform, given that they already have an LMS in place?
Yes. I mean, that's a great question, and I think in a way you could make the same. So I'm going to answer your question, but in order to make myself clear, you could make the same thing for the content solution. In the beginning, when we started selling Showpad as a content solution, IT said, "But we have SharePoint,
Yeah,
we have Dropbox, we have Box. My content lives there."
yeah,
But the point is, like, it's not findable, it's not engaging, and it totally lives outside the context of a salesperson. Like, when does a salesperson needs to have training on a
yeah,
specific product? The moment we know he's going to have a deal that is about that product. When does a seller needs to have training on competitive objection handling? When the seller has lost a deal against a competitor.
mm,
And so the LMS systems or the content systems, like, they do not have like the context and the intelligence to deliver it when a salesperson really needs it. So I think that's really a big one. So the need-based content, the need-based learning, that is key. But I think the biggest differentiator for me is that so every like sales enablement platform that has some training capabilities has the typical course creation, the certification, like the learning paths, all of that. But that's not the reason why customers buy it. I think the reasons why customers buy it is because people consume content, so they learn, they do a test, so they get certified. But then it's the idea of practicing, and where they have a practicing pitching platform on Showpad, for example, where they can submit their pitch to their managers and then get feedback, get scoring, get coaching, get comments, like where the results also then get into a very social type of environment. So I think the practicing is where the difference really is being made. Video coaching, video recordings, all of those types of things. The courses are I would say that's basic stuff. That's not.
Oh, indeed, that, because that's one of the things which I really like, and that is one of the things which I followed Showpad's growth with interest, because when you acquired LearnCore and became eventually turned it around to Showpad Coach, And I like the fact that you're moving away from the fact that a typical LMS might not necessarily give you the option, although LMSs also are going to evolve to a point
Totally.
where eventually, for example, one of the things that I do is that not necessarily from a sales function, but when we train companies, now I'm reaching a point where I'm no longer in front of a classroom. I'm
Yep.
actually recording short videos, people are following it, and people are responding with messages which I respond to as well, which is again the evolution of what you're saying. But I guess they are still not there where people can send their videos. But I think if you can just send a YouTube link, that you're eventually going to get there. But of course, the idea is what I really like is that LMSs will try and catch up to you because this is such a lucrative market, right? But tell me about this concept of Showpad Coach. Why, from a CPO perspective, yes, you're
Right.
CPO now, why did you have that product in your portfolio? Why was the evolution towards that?
So I think I mean the following, right? So if you basically look at what a platform like Showpad does, then basically there are, I would say, three big buckets. First of all, we help salespeople prepare. So we make sure that when they're in front of a customer who's smarter, more educated, that they have the right content, that they are trained in the right way, that they have the right coaching. So like preparation of salespeople is super important. Then the second step is about, okay, now that you're prepared, how will you engage your customer and engage the buyer? And that starts, for example, with personalization, giving salespeople the tools to personalize content, like tailored to the customer, but then have very powerful ways to deliver that through email integrations, buying portals, video conferencing integrations, field sales presentations, all of that. And so that's the second piece. The third piece is the insights you get from that, because we talk everything. Now, the point I want to make is that if you think about the best training content that you have in a company, that you have for a salesperson, it's actually seeing the engagements of other salespeople. If I want to learn how to sell a product, then how the hell can a marketer learn me that? Well, like, there's no way. Like, I need to see the other salesperson practice or actually sell to a customer. That is why we also bought VoiceFox, the meeting recording solution, where now we can actually bring in snippets of recorded sales presentations into a training. Well, and so a salesperson that is selling actually generates the most powerful training content ever. And so that's why like we strongly believe it needs to be in one platform, right? Because the preparation, the selling, and the learning like ties together.
And I think that moving forward, I think that's what I really think is going to be the kind of the unique selling proposition of a sales enablement platform when compared to, which has all these kind of things connected when compared to a normal LMS. And it's not that pieces of content. At the end of the day, it all boils down to content, right? But this kind of interactivity is what is going to be required. The ability to actually manager to actually cut and dice it and then show it to them. And I think that's what I think is really, really cool from that perspective. And let me ask you this. Sorry.
And so the last one on your LMS question, like, yes, LMS systems will evolve and probably do some of those things. But the reason I believe they will not win this battle is because you have to be in the selling workflow to enable proper training and coaching.
Exactly.
It doesn't happen in isolation.
And I think that's also because LMS is, of course, the idea is that LMS is geared towards people from different functions. This is my thought on it, because from what I hear you say is that, but the sales function is so dynamic that, especially with all the changes happening in the business place today, that you cannot just say, I'm going to create the content once and then go back. Because again, that's one of the things we always say when I've always taught sales. I've always had people saying that, yeah, but sales, anybody can do it. But the answer is not anybody can do it. And the fact is that the way things are changing, the fundamentals of sales are also changing. That you need people always on the move. Now, let me ask you this, Louis. When are you going to be looking at coaching for sales managers themselves?
I love that. It's I would say one of the most underinvested domains in sales enablement and sales training and sales coaching. Like, we forget about the sales manager, and that is really bad, because they have the biggest impact on their team. Enabling a sales manager will magnify the successful.
Indeed.
So I had a long conversation with Tamara Schenk about the topic, who's also very passionate about sales
Yeah.
coaching and sales manager enablement. And it's something we now started doing with Showpad as well. And so within Showpad, we have a concept called the Manager Hub,
Mm.
where they can actually see what their team is doing, like in detail, and then actually give coaching, all of that. So yeah, super, super important.
Because I really think that's also the way forward. Because, for example, I have been involved, and that's something that you're also aware of, that I do sales management training programs, right?
Yeah.
And my apologies for that.
No problem.
And essentially, what you see is that I really think there's a need for the fact that there should be kind of peer coaching among sales managers. Just like salespeople learn from each other, watching each other, sales managers should also be able to do that.
Absolutely.
And systems should be able to actually, I mean, systems can, but you need to have the right kind of content, because what companies also need to then realize is the content needs to be aligned in learn with sales management. It's quite different from how do I do with objection handling, but now it's got to do with how do I take a look at my go-to-market strategies? How do I then make sure that I have the right amount of salespeople? How do I coach my salespeople? And all these are things that I think is going to be very interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
And, go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, I think where so far we have focused too much on is we focus too much on enabling sales manager to understand the metrics of their sales team. That's how many calls they have. That's how many emails they've sent. That's how many discovery things they've done. Which is all important, but like now it's time to start zooming in on what are they actually saying. What are those conversations about? And can we improve objection handling? And can we improve this and that? And that's a much bigger ROI than going from 15 calls.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's fascinating. So now let me ask you this. You just fresh out of talking to 500 prospects and everything else. So what were your learnings? And I know that people say, talk about the top 3. No, I want you to talk about, tell me as much as you can, because I really think the audience would really, as much as you can remember.
Of course, it's still fresh.
Yes, yeah.
So it's a short summary. I think to start off with, I mean, sales enablement is successful or fails with collaboration. Like you need to have a collaborative mindset in sales and marketing and sales enablement to make this a success. If marketing doesn't invite sales to create content, if sales doesn't invite marketing to create a sales process, if they do not sit in a room to agree on mutual KPIs, sales enablement will fail. Because like you need to have aligned departments there. And that is still today, like we have 1,200 customers. I speak with most of them every single year. Like that is still the biggest challenge they face. Like the silos, like it's as old as sales and marketing, but they're still there. And so we need to break them down. That's 1. 2, I would say the idea that sales enablement actually should be about revenue enablement or about commercial enablement, because like if you think about it from your customer perspective, like customers expect a consistent experience. They expect a consistent level of quality and service and value conversations, and it doesn't matter if they're speaking with a sales rep or a customer success coach or a service person or a support person. They all need to be enabled. Every customer facing person needs to be enabled. So, and I think like that is gradually starting to become clear for a lot of people. Because if you have a successful sales enablement practice and implementation, all of the other departments suddenly say, hey, where can we find access to this? So that's 2. And then I think thirdly, I would say manager enablement is becoming a topic. So how do you enable a manager? Like what are the best practices there? The importance of sales coaching is increasing in sales enablement for sure. And then overall, I would say it is becoming a thing, right? I think if you want to have a good career in sales, then do sales enablement. There's so much opportunity there. It's
and let me ask you, so where is AI coming into all this, right? So for me, is AI just in the content part, or is AI in the coaching part, or is AI in, of course, the idea is of with the voice fox, it's a little bit of coaching and a little bit of content and everything else. So where is AI coming in, and can you give us a little bit of an idea on that?
Yeah. So it's of course a lot of vendors have different definitions on what AI is,
Yeah.
and some of it is really AI, some of it is just like like business rules that are set up. But I mean, that being said, there is definitely a place for AI in sales enablement. I would say at the core, there's the ability to have algorithms that help you to find the most effective content and training based on your clicking behavior, based on the deals that you have in front of you, based on what other people are doing. So there's an element of data gathering and data mining where we want to provide you the best
Yeah.
recommendations based on what to do. So there's definitely a big piece there where Showpad has great capabilities, where others have great capabilities. So recommendations, like let's put it like that. I think the more exciting opportunity that we start seeing with AI and sales enablement is actually analyzing customer conversations, and actually analyzing or transcribing those video meetings or even the emails, and then basically putting NLP on top of it, where you analyze the copy, the text, and then create, I would say, concepts out of that and translate those concepts into actionable. I would say on those two domains, I definitely see massive value.
I actually saw recently a case study from a company, and I cannot name the name of the company because we're trying to work with them on a research project. They call them virtual agents. They talk about how you can actually have a great conversation where when a customer calls in, based on the customer's previous profile, AI routes them to the best possible
Yep.
individual. But then on the individual side, based on how well they deal with that
Yep.
and whether the customer is satisfied or not,
Yep.
AI can go and suggest different kinds of training programs, exactly like what you said.
Yep.
But I really think that's more seen in a call center area. But imagine that powerful. That's what I'm absolutely looking forward to what you guys are going to be doing with VoiceFox
Yep.
and AI, because as you said, this is the way I envisage, because I've not seen how it works, but the way I'm seeing this is that I'm having a conversation. I'm going to have 10 different conversations as one salesperson, and I can take a look at analyzing the past 10 conversations I've had as a salesperson. But then I'll see of the 10, 3 or 4 of them led to the next stage. 3 or 4 did not. What did we do when we went in? What words were used? And then when a customer says the following words, should it prompt? This is what I am imagining
Yep.
what AI can actually help based on past conversations of that individual.
Yep.
Eventually, within an organization, if GDPR is not a big issue,
Yep.
is hey, we have had 10, 15 salespeople, and each one of them have dealt with a customer. But when a customer had an objection like this, or objection like this, how have we handled this? So if we hear the same thing in the next conversation, this is what we need to be doing.
Yep, absolutely. And I mean, and that is, I would say, for a big part where it will evolve to. So that's there's still a lot of work to make that a reality,
Yeah,
technology-wise, but like the building blocks are there. It's just a matter of putting them together.
but it's absolutely fascinating. So, Louis, before I finally let you go and go do and conquer the world, let me ask you this. As a CPO right now, why did you get back into CPO? So essentially, you were out there opening up your branches in the US and stuff like that. But why did you go back into becoming a CPO again?
Yeah, it's so I always was obviously very deeply involved as a founder in the product, but I think what we're seeing in software today, and it is a relatively new thing, is that like the best product really will win, and I would say the era where you just need to have a great sales team and a mediocre product, I think that is past us. Now you need to have a great sales team and a great product. So for me as a founder, one of my biggest responsibilities is to make sure we win as a company, and for me that means making sure we build the best product. And there's nothing more exciting for me than building a product, spending a lot of time with customers, understanding their problems, and building capabilities that helps them solve them. So that's the essence of what a software company should do.
And when you're doing the CPO, to what extent are you starting to proactively involve your customers in your brainstorming processes and everything else?
I mean, super active. I think, for example, like this week, we had our customer event, but before the customer event, we had a customer advisory board where we had like half a day of feedback from customers, workshops. Then we had, after our customer event, a full day with administrators of the Showpad platform where we like dove into details and specific features. So it's a constant, like you constantly have to capture the input of your customers. We have customer advisory boards, executive advisory boards. We have, the ability for them to constantly provide feedback and input and feature requests. So it's a never-ending process. Like you have to consistently make it happen.
And when you have these advisory boards, do you actually record them, or is it real time? You know what I mean? That's so that even you can even start putting your AI into this.
Because it's really both. Yeah. Yeah. So we do them in person, or we also record them, and then
really cool. And again, Louis, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. And I wish you all the best, because I know that you're bringing your show on the road to the United States. You're going to have your Transform in Chicago next month.
You should be there
in November. So essentially, I wish you all the best, and I look forward to seeing all wonderful things about Showpad, and more importantly, the domain of sales enablement, which really is going to help sales people and sales organizations be much more professional. Not that they're not professional now, but they can be even more professional, be more customer centric, and have balanced workloads for their salespeople, which I think is wonderful news for the sales profession, which in my opinion has not seen so much excitement as much as sales enablement is doing right now. So thank you once again for sharing your time with us.
You're welcome. Thanks, Eva.